Well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our webinar this afternoon. I'm Hadley Stoller, Chief Executive of Healthcare Innovation Consortium. I'm really thrilled to be joined today by Karen Ventura from CLEO Systems and Jeffrey Howe from King's College Hospital. They'll be speaking later on throughout the session. It's really good to have you here, and thank you so much for joining us. So just a bit of housekeeping for today. Your audio and video will be disabled, but please feel free to make use of the chat function. If you ask a question or you have a comment, we really want to hear from you. We want this to be as engaging as possible. Please try to put who you are, where you're from, what your role is, maybe a LinkedIn profile so we can connect. That would be super. We will try and get to all the questions throughout the session, and if we can't, we will, get back to you afterwards. As you can see, we're recording the session, and you will get a copy of that recording within one working day. And we'll also share the slides with you over email afterwards. So that's just a bit of housekeeping from us. Just a very quick introduction into HIC. And the Electronic Patient Record Network, of which this forms part of, in terms of the benefits that provides. So we specifically work across the ecosystem to make EPRs work in practice. We do that through three core strands: discovery, where we're helping to define the problem; implementation support, where we're helping to deliver and support people to use those solutions; and then success, which is around benefit realization and improving go live of electronic patient record systems, but also those technologies and innovations which we'll be hearing about today as an example that revolve around the EPR and support the EPR. And as you can see, we've worked with a lot of organizations, and there's just a few logos at the bottom that you can see. One of the other kind of parts to what we do at HIC and what we do specifically through the EPR network is to bring that community together. The network itself is a space for health tech leaders, vendors, suppliers, individuals to kind of come along, collaborate and share learnings. We host a number of national summits in partnership with our partner Convensis Group. We've had our EPR summit in England a couple of, it was more than a few weeks ago now. Time flies really, but we were in Birmingham in February. We'll be in Scotland in September, Northern Ireland in October, and Wales in November. So we would be thrilled to have you join us on those dates, and there'll be a QR code, I think, at the end for you to scan and join us. And so that's just a little bit about how we bring the community together. And I will share another slide at the end in terms of how you can get involved in our specialist interest groups, which are NHS specific groups for individuals to get involved and to have their voice really and have their say. So that's just a little bit about HIC and who we are. So I'll hand over to Karen from CLEO Systems, who's going to talk to us about modernising home care prescribing and share some lessons from a first of type EPS implementation. So Karen, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Hadley, and good afternoon, everybody. So first of all, just to kind of just share a little bit about CLEO Systems and who we are. So we're actually part of Integrated 24 Group, who have actually been in urgent care market space now for about 25 years and are a leading provider of NHS 111 services in the southeast of England. Can we move on to the next slide, please? So a little bit about EPS. So our eSolo EPS product has been now live since June 2022. We ran our first of type with Midlands Partnership Foundation Trust, and this was absolutely mainly meant to be a prescribing product for use in secondary care outpatients. From a benefits perspective, it kind of does what it says on the tin. It provides that opportunity for within outpatients for an electronic prescription to be sent, but provides a lot of flexibility, means that prescriptions can be sent out of hours or evenings or weekends, or when a clinician may have a little bit of time to slot in. And there's lots of kind of other benefits that we're starting to collate around carbon footprint, for example, reduced travel time and processing time. So there are cost savings there for trusts around actual clinician time. Also, from a patient experience perspective, much improved, as they don't necessarily have to travel a long way to get their prescriptions because they can just pick it up from their local nominated pharmacy. If we go to the next one, please. So from a features and perspective and interoperability perspective, I just want to share a few things here as we go through the depths of the presentation with Jeff. So our product, as well as being fully accredited for EPS, does like to have interoperability at its heart. We have integration with GP Connect, so a patient's GP record can be viewed. We also are starting to integrate with other EPRs as well, to support all prescriber roles from an outpatient and community pharmacy perspective. As you would expect of a product in the marketplace, we are fully compliant with all fire messaging standards, so it makes that interoperability really easy to do. Some of the things that we fetched in as part of the home care, we will talk about. One of them is specifically the bit on the bottom right there around supporting a pharmacist approval process. So allowing for a prescriber to submit their home care prescription, and it will sit in a holding bay waiting for an actual pharmacist to approve it first. And there's a kind of back and forth process goes on there, which Jeff will articulate a bit later. Like we mentioned, we do support remote consultations, and we do have repeat prescribing coming into this product suite in the coming months once we go through a first of type exercise with NHS England on that particular set of features. We'll go on to the next one, please. So this is just an example of some of the ways we can articulate better outcomes with CLEO EPS. So we've kind of got this kind of ineligible FP10s, 100% eliminates that, and also helps from a lost and stolen perspective as well, because it can't be got around in the system. Some of our customers report quite a large saving in clinician time per year. Organisations are able to kind of supervise the prescribing process a little bit better if they wanted to, say, for example, around junior representatives, and can save thousands around just admin and postage and car time. We would fully expect, as part of the home care first of type, that we'll really start to collate this type of data for that as well, in order to be able to share this with people that want to come aboard the journey once we get the approval to do so. If we go to the next one, please. So just an overview of the session a little bit. So home care prescribing is under kind of operational and clinical pressure across the NHS. A lot of stakeholders involved with a lot of disparate systems. And what that means is that organisations may rely on paper or emails, but this disconnection in the systems means that you have a variation in practice, when in theory it could maybe standardise a little bit more. And absolutely means that you have an increased admin burden for clinicians and pharmacy teams. But kind of like when you break it down, kind of like into who carries the risk, this is kind of like a shared risk across everybody, really, and it isn't just about the clinicians and the pharmacy teams as well, or the home care providers. It's about the patients as well. And they're also kind of sharing that risk, even if they don't know it. And that's where it gets super complex. The next slide, please. So we went on this journey with King's College. Jeff and the King's College were already an existing customer with us, with a deployment into secondary care outpatients there at King's College. And NHS England announced some first of type funding. And we, along with Jeff, made a joint submission to look to deploy CLEO EPS into a home care setting. In order to do that, that required development work, but not only from CLEO Systems. So this was months and months of collaborative work, not only with King's, but with NHS England, with home care provider that was part of the pilot, and also a dispensing system as well. And if we could go on to the next slide, please, I'll just talk a little bit about how we did this. So this was a 5-way collaboration. We did detailed process mapping across all stakeholders to come up with the end-to-end process. We prioritised all of the features together. We built this new capability that I mentioned around this holding bay for the pharmacist approvals to ensure governance. And we used agile ways of working across all of this five-way collaboration. We had sprints, we had boards, but what was great was we did all of this remotely, completely remotely. We had weekly calls in this manner, use the tools that are available nowadays to be able to do the requirements gathering, the process flowing, the governance, and worked very, very well, I would say, with NHS England on this one. So we entered into first of type in August last year with Jeff at King's College. He will talk about kind of the drugs and everything that we used. This is initial proof of concept as with a single trust. We're still in that first of type at the moment. NHS England are continuing to work with us on a controlled pilot phase. We want to optimize the design. We may bring in some future integration requirements, and we do actually have some phase 2 requirements that we're going to start talking to NHS England about very, very soon. Once this pilot has been completely successful, then NHS England do anticipate making it more widely available to other providers, so that we get some consistency and scalability, as well as the interop across the home care medicines landscape as a whole. Next slide, please.
Thanks, Karen. So there might be some questions in the chat. I just wanted to ask a couple of questions before we hand over to Jeff, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Just to let you know that there's a real broad attendance on the call today. I was just kind of looking. We've got people from the Royal Orthopaedic Hospital, people from Moorfields, Newcastle, Mid Yorkshire, Frimley, Sussex, Kent, all over the country, really. So, be interested to kind of get your perspective on the, the different demographics of trusts, on the call, and where and how this, may be able to help them, I suppose, because obviously we're here from Jeff shortly, but maybe that's something just to think about.
Yeah.
But what I really wanted to kind of get to was, your view on what's kind of actually held back progress in home care prescribing. Is it a technology limitation? Is it fragmented processes? Does it sound like it, maybe from what you were just describing? Is it a lack of ownership? Is it something else? What's your view on that? And Lucy,
Sure.
thank you for putting your hand up. If you want to put your question in the chat, we'll get back to you. But everyone's muted for now, if that's okay. But anyway, Karen, over to you.
Yeah, sure. So I definitely don't think it's a lack of ownership at all. I think this is absolutely, we all work in this kind of ecosystem as it stands, and regularly, certainly being a system supplier and talking to end users regularly, you hear how, people are having to just work around things in order to keep a process flowing, and maybe people get used to that. This was a real opportunity to kind of like innovate and collaborate and build kind of like a digital ecosystem around home care prescribing. And I'm really looking forward to taking that much further. And whenever we can take these opportunities, we should, so that clinicians don't have to work around things, and patients get a seamless service.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the question actually from Lucy, or the comment really, was that in her trust, the Newcastle upon Tyne Hospital, or hospitals, I think, that they said that they use 12 different companies and there's no standardisation, and we don't have the bandwidth to train hundreds of people on how to use multiple different systems. So I don't know if you've got a comment on that, Karen, just to go back to Lucy.
Yeah, it's a definite challenge, and Jeff might also have a perspective on this as well, because it's quite common to have more than one home care provider. I think that, as a system supplier, we absolutely will look to help with that as much as possible, so we do provide trainer type scenarios, but we also do provide trainer materials as well, be them kind of video or, you know, very, very detailed user guides. But we do try to work really hard on that so that we can help with kind of lighten that burden. But I'm pretty sure Jeff will have something to comment on that as well.
Yeah, no, I totally resonate with Lucy's point, is the fact that we have 12 different home care providers that we're working with, no standardization between them all. And if anything, there's kind of a growing digital divide in terms of the level of digital maturity between these home care providers. And we're now beginning to find ourselves at a trust level where we have 10 different logins to remember and 10 different passwords to remember for each, each specific home care portal. And I guess clinicians alike will also have that too. And just to circle back on, like the technology there and the fragmentation, I think, yeah, it is less about one single issue, but the fragmented systems is probably the biggest challenge that I would most resonate with, and the fact that we've obviously through this first of type we've digitized the prescribing element, which is just one link in what is quite a long chain of what a complex home care system that it is. So we made good steps forward, but we really need to look at kind of the whole home care process, and actually do we almost need to take a step back and kind of do we actually look at the model itself, and is this an opportunity to redesign the whole model? Appreciate that's a big ask, but also, like, if the financial flows, which is out of scope of this first of type, if that doesn't that's if we can't digitize that, well, there's always going to be that fragmentation within the system, and that's kind of where I think this project has really kind of exposed, and that's really where the focus, I would say, needs to be going forward.
Well, yeah, I was going to kind of ask the question around what problem the technology is trying to solve, but I think we've picked up on some of those aspects anyway. Clearly, interoperability, access to systems, defining that process, making sure that the right technologies are in place for the right reasons, and not kind of just putting multiple layers on, unnecessarily, and almost being brave, isn't it, Jeff, from what you're describing, just being brave to take that step back, exactly what Karen was describing, doing that process mapping, understanding that discovery, figuring out what the actual need and ask is, and then coming in with those solutions, partly of which it is technology, but obviously from what you're describing, it's process and culture, as well. Which leads me wonderfully, actually, Jeff, into your slides, if I can ask the team to put those up. One other question, actually, just before we do that, just from Rebecca. She's from Swansea Bay Health Board in hopefully sunny Wales, same as in Manchester today, asking, have you digitized with just one home care provider as part of the FOT testing? So maybe you can get to that question. Thank you, Rebecca.
Yeah, no problem.
As you're talking, Jeff, I think you do cover that anyway. So yeah, over to you.
Thank you. And hello, everyone. So I'm now going to talk about the EPS home care proof of concept pilot from a trust perspective. So really, I'm going to focus on what it takes to operate it, to govern it, and to scale it at provider level. Because from our perspective, this was more than just implementing like a digital system or an IT system. It also changed how we managed clinical risk within the trust. It also changed how the teams had to kind of operate and interact with each other. And also we also had to think about the financial flows, again, which was out of scope of this particular pilot project, but we had to think about how we're going to reimburse and pay those invoices. So we all are very familiar with the current process of home care that is, very manual and paper-based. We experience delays, lost prescriptions in the post. We don't really have any real-time visibility, albeit it's improving, whilst we use 12 different home care patient portals. And there is those fragmented workflows as well, from the point of prescribing to the delivery to then to that reimbursement piece. And this was all kind of highlighted within the House of Lords inquiry, which was published in 2023. And, it described the home care system as being excessively complex, and highlighted the need for electronic prescribing within home care as one of its recommendations. And as Karen mentioned, King's was selected by NHS England to be a pilot site for this first of type project to determine whether EPS can indeed support the management of an electronic prescription within the home care sector. So the next slide is going to just, it's quite a busy slide, but ultimately it's to demonstrate the amount of work, I guess, that is required internally at trust level in order to implement an IT system as a whole. And so this is the kind of the requirements that we had to, the infrastructure, I guess, and the foundations that we needed to put in place in order to go live with this particular pilot project. And first of all, that included, getting executive sign-off and approval to take on this formal kind of risk ownership for this first of type pilot project. We had to update our DPIAs and get renewed ICT and information governance sign-off due to this new arm that's been bolted on essentially to the CLEO EPS system. And then we had to do a full DCB 0160, so full clinical safety case, and with our clinical safety officer, which included, hazard logs and supported by training materials, SOPs, business continuity plans, etc. So that's just kind of like highlighting some of the paperwork, which takes a lot of effort to get through a hospital setting. But also not to forget the kind of the invisible work as well that happened in the background in order to go live, which included the smart card activation and updating our users with the right RBAC roles and ensuring that they were fit for purpose. And also, we also needed to update our Windows systems from 10 to 11, which may seem simple, but what actually took a lot longer and a lot more, lot harder than one may anticipate. But that being said, we did go live in August of last year with our rheumatology patients. We specifically selected filgotinib, which obviously is a tablet, and we had a small patient cohort of around 100 patients, and we had these aligned with the home care provider HealthNet. And I should actually circle back to the home care provider expression of interest, which happened mid to late 2024, where ultimately we sent out an expression of interest to all the home care providers who are as part of the framework, and they had to meet some of the prerequisites in order to be able to manage the workload via the EPS, including having a primary care pharmacy contract. And there was, HealthNet were obviously one of those providers, and they aligned with the fact that we already had a contract in place for filgotinib, hence why they were selected as the home care provider. So since then, we have now processed over 200 prescriptions for our patients, and happy to say that the pilot has met its primary objective, which is the safe transmission of a home care prescription via EPS. And during that time, we haven't lost any prescriptions. It's removed the manual handling. So we've kind of removed the hand annotations as well, which account for around 60 to 70% of our EPIC produced kind of PDF prescriptions. And also it's improved kind of accuracy and improved accuracy in terms of more consistent prescribing habits as well through EPS. And then we've also introduced the pharmacy holding bay, which is the main kind of innovation as part of this kind of workflow. And so this holding bay essentially allows the clinical pharmacy team to access those prescriptions and clinically validate them before they are then sent to the spine to be downloaded by the home care provider. And all in all, we've definitely have improved visibility and accountability through the EPS tracker. And so which is really meaningful safety improvements. And ultimately, this whole proof of concept has shown that electronic prescribing within home care is feasible. So in terms of what hasn't changed, and there are some areas that haven't changed, and so you can nip on to the next slide. But so far, the end-to-end delivery times remain are still around 33, 35 days. So there's been no kind of measurable reduction in that in terms of that efficiency by the time point of prescribing to when the patient receives the medication. There's also been no measurable reduction in hospital workload, and that's from a clinician perspective as well as a home care team perspective. And there's still the same number of touch points within the EPS workflow compared to our current Epic and paper workflow. But ultimately, this isn't a failure of EPS, because the pilot was designed to test the safety, governance, and the feasibility of EPS, and not to deliver immediate time savings. And again, it kind of reflects that we've digitized the prescribing step, but not necessarily the logistics and the financial flows, which are kind of also quite important aspects of the home care system. So, as I mentioned earlier, we have digitized one chain in what is quite a long and complex, digitized one link in what is quite a long chain, that is the home care process. In terms of the operational reality, in practice, clinicians and pharmacists are working across multiple disconnected systems. So if you nip on to the next slide, you can see onto the next one, sorry. So here we have multiple touch points for our pharmacists and our clinicians in terms of having to access duplicate double systems in terms of their medication or previous medication and bloods, etc. on Epic, as well as prescribing on CLEO. And then I just want to highlight kind of the wonderful work that my project support officer Yumna has done in terms of ensuring that this pilot project is feasible by taking kind of screenshots of the prescription from the EPS tracker as well as CLEO and uploading them onto Epic, as well as maintaining a spreadsheet for this particular pilot project. And also we have having to create an order within Epic in order to reconcile the invoices. So all this kind of extra kind of workarounds is feasible for a proof of concept. But if we are to scale up, this is where kind of that lack of integration kind of it becomes a barrier for a trust like King's, who have that kind of integrated financial kind of element within the prescribing bit. So we nip back to the previous slide. This is just kind of some of the known limitations of the EPS and home care pilot. The fact, and the main one being that EPS is currently a standalone system, and so we have to duplicate activity within Epic. So that is uploading that prescription on, as well as in that invoicing in order to reimburse. Kind of the one main hurdle for EPS going forward within home care is the financial flows, and obviously that remained out of scope for this pilot project. Again, Karen touched on it earlier that the repeat prescribing functionality is in development, if not soon to be ready, and that will really kind of improve that, again, the functionality within EPS, rather than having to prescribe an acute prescription for 3 months, being able to have that repeat prescription functionality, which would be really beneficial. And then it's just kind of understanding, or we need to kind of test EPS further to understand how it can manage a more complex regimens. So obviously, we've demonstrated that it works well for a low-tech tablet, but it's understanding how EPS can manage a mid-tech service, so in induction dosing and then moving on to maintenance dosing, and also kind of high-tech service as well, and just understanding does EPS have that functionality, or is it a case that we just kind of stratify kind of how EPS is used going forward. And then onto the final slide, it's just kind of some of clinician feedback and their experience. And the most consistent message from them is that is the lack of it being a standalone system, and that being a real burden in terms of clinician time. and that integration piece is key. But they do value, obviously, the reduced reliance on paper, and we've witnessed fewer delays in terms of the EPS system, and obviously we've had less missing signatures and kind of all the other quirks that happen within the current paper-based process. And then really just to as part of the presentation, if we do want to move from proof of concept to something can work as a national standard, that integration piece is really key. The financial and the invoicing flows need to catch up and with the clinical flows and that prescribing element to become digitized. And then in terms of consistency, in terms of, we already have standards in place for clinical safety, information governance, and EPS, etc. But they all kind of sit across different areas. And so we can bring these kind of different elements together into a shared digital and safety baseline that would help trusts and home care providers avoid from doing things differently and kind of creating that digital divide going further. So hopefully through this proof of concept, we've kind of created that blueprint and that baseline that can be developed on going forward. So I shall stop there, and hopefully that gives you some insight into how the proof of concept has been for the trust level.
That's been really great, Jeff. Thank you. Really, really insightful. I'm going to ask you some specific questions actually on what you've just kind of presented, but there are some questions also in the chat that I'd like to get to, if that's okay. So Zainab, sorry if I've not pronounced that correctly, from Manchester Foundation Trust said, did you experience challenges with Go Live? And I know you spoke broadly about some of the challenges, at a high level, but specifically on Go Live, were there any challenges that you want to maybe call out, and also how did you overcome them?
Yes, yeah. Well, I think that brings about that collaborative piece between CLEO Systems, RX Web, my own internal IT teams, and our smart card, Ali Raza. So that was the main challenge. It was just having the right RBAC roles within each smart card. And literally on Go Live, we had everyone on a call testing everyone's cards in order to make sure that they had the right accessible rights, and being able to be able to prescribe or be able to clinically screen, etc. So they were the main challenges, really, was that smart card activation and just getting the right roles within that. But having everyone on that call, everyone was able to identify where the issues sat, whether it was within CLEO, or whether it was in our own IT systems, or was it with RX Web. And so then everyone within that one call were able to do whatever they needed to do in the background in order to implement that. So that was probably the main challenge on the Go Live date. But we had some really good UAT sessions as well, leading up to Go Live. So some really good learnings from that came through. So it was kind of really good, kind of pragmatic and structured UAT leading up to Go Live. So we felt fairly confident that on the day that everything was going to be a success. But it was just aligning all those people, and especially it was summer months and people were going on holidays, and it was just trying to push forward and just get it done before we all had our summer breaks, essentially.
So summer break, definitely do it just before summer break, because then everyone can get it done and go enjoy
enjoy your holiday. Yeah,
a sangria somewhere. But I think from what you're saying there, Jeff, it's kind of like those challenges, those potential barriers, those kind of potential pitfalls with any Go Live were kind of clearly understood through collaboration with CLEO and others. It was obviously mapped out. There was a plan for it. Obviously you can't plan for everything, but clearly it had been thought about, and because it was being done in that collaborative way, it sounds like from what you're describing that actually it was fairly seamless, because everyone was behind it, but that partnership was kind of in place, which is obviously really important, isn't it, in introducing something like this. Yeah,
most definitely, and really have early engagement as well with the clinical teams. So your admin teams, your consultants, the pharmacists, so everyone who's involved in that prescribing pathway, get their engagement early on, get them on board, and that really helped, and also manage their expectations as well. You know, that this is just a proof of concept. You know, like we're not entirely sure what's going to happen. So, but they were all very flexible and very considered all that took all that on board, and we made it work.
It's those simple things, isn't it? Giving that ownership and giving that co-design, you know, as a clinical community in this case, you know, is obviously so important. There's lots of questions coming in. I do want to try and get to as many as I can. So Kelly has asked, did you also track the volume of prescription failures or rework activity following the go live period?
Yes, yeah, that's a really good point. And I just took note actually when Karen was talking about better outcomes and collating this data. And I think there's a real opportunity there that we didn't necessarily do in terms of this proof of concept, was to capture almost the KPIs from a trust level, because at the moment the version 7 of our home care KPIs are very much home care provider based, outcome based, kind of reactive, whereas in this new EPS world and in this new digital world, we do have an opportunity to actually implement KPIs from a trust perspective, actually, and understand, you know, how long did it take from the point of prescribing to when the clinical pharmacist screened that prescription to when it went to the spine, where were the delays there? Where were the rejections? Where were the amendments required? You know, was that delay due to, you know, the patient not going and getting their bloods, for example? So EPS and having that digital system and having that data would really kind of improve our kind of real-time visibility of the end-to-end prescription journey. And I think that's kind of, just as I, you know, was preparing for this webinar, just kind of reflections as well, that's kind of a key element that we could have focused on, but I guess, you know, we're just kind of focused on the proof of concept itself. But there's a real opportunity there to complement the version 7 of the current RPS home care standards with kind of what happens within the trust level. So rather than just, you know, have everything focused on the kind of the reactive element, kind of the from a home care perspective. But we did capture the amendments, and I don't have the data to hand, but there was very few prescriptions required much kind of amendments. If anything, there was kind of just an issue around duplicate prescribing, but that was more of a kind of a behavioral kind of change that we needed to instill with our consultants. Is kind of more training was required in terms of like how to utilize the CLEO system, as well as like understanding where they were seeing on Epic, because in order for us to process an invoice, and getting very technical now, we need to create another prescription on Epic, because that was causing some confusion. So it's just kind of more training requirements really for our clinicians.
There is a question coming up about Epic actually, but I just wonder, Karen, if you wanted to come in, and was there anything you wanted to add? I guess my observation for what you were saying there, Jeff, is that obviously you can't do everything in a proof of concept, because it is exactly that. You're implementing something to prove that it works, and that concept of improvement and, you know, innovation is actually coming to fruition. And it sounds like that absolutely was the case here. There were clearly lessons, but it feels like it was a great springboard to then, you know, have that wider rollout. But maybe, Karen, I don't know if you want to come in and comment on any of those kind of points, really.
Yeah, I was really just reflecting on this idea of having trust level KPIs, and I think that as we come to do our kind of phase 2 pieces for the proof of concept, one of them actually could be some kind of like inbuilt dashboarding that tracks, you know, those KPIs and looks at the failures and to why, and looks at the time to get from end to end as well, for sure, that kind of changes real time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really valuable information as well to hold from a home care sector, because at the moment we hold obviously our home care providers to account, but ultimately is it the fact that we, you know, the trusts don't have their house in order, that, you know, why are these prescriptions becoming urgent, for example? So having that real-time visibility, and again it comes back to that patient piece as well, that shared risk as well, like you mentioned earlier, Karen, is like, actually, you know, patients need to understand that they're also part of this journey, and for them to understand and to have manage their expectations too, as to how complex the process is and why we need them on board and go get their bloods done, etc. Yeah,
absolutely. No, for sure. There's another question from Rebecca, and actually, Karen, I want to ask another question around kind of coverage to all corners of the UK, whether it's just England, whether it includes other corners. Obviously, Rebecca is from Wales, but her question is also, well, she got a comment in the question. So technology readiness and change readiness need to be managed as parallel work with balanced effort across both, focusing heavily on the technical elements while giving less attention to change readiness can undermine adoption and overall success. I think I broadly agree with that comment. And then the question was, if proof of concept has been achieved, is your priority now to develop the integration with EPIC or to expand to more home care providers? So, and actually, Manpreet's question was, is there planned work to integrate with EPIC and other EPR systems? So, Karen, I don't know if you want to answer. I know there's a few comments and points there that I've thrown at you, but no,
it's fine.
Do you want to cover that?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So with the kind of like EPIC integration, that's clearly quite important as we've gone through this process, in this kind of quest here to make systems not disjointed. We've still got that particular bit that is still duplicating effort. So that's very, very important. So when we come to talk about the phase 2 that NHS England want to do to kind of round this off, that'll be definitely something that I will be feeding in, but I guess it'll be on Jeff's list to feed in as well. And I'd hope with the help of NHS England, we can move that forward for sure. I'm just reading those questions, just bear with 1 second.
Yeah.
I can't remember it all at once.
Well, so there's the coverage question, and then there's the EPR integration and then the change readiness.
Yeah, so the coverage question, so obviously the ambition is to expand it, yes, absolutely. But we can't do that until this first of type is fully signed off. So this collaboration, this 5-way thing that I talked about will continue. I think there's been some feedback out of the first phase where we want to make some enhancements, and then we'll probably do another round. Hopefully now that we're implemented and Jeff's got people all trained up and ready to go and everything, that may be a quicker process. But once NHS England sign that off as something that they do want to adopt, then absolutely there will be the look to expand it further. With regard to the England-Wales question, so this was an England thing, but I personally don't see any reason why it shouldn't be, more widely spread. And Rebecca, more than happy to kind of, at CLEO side, have a chat with you about that. Regarding the readiness, I think this is a really big thing, isn't it? So this is a really, really, really complex process. And like hearing, what trusts actually have to manage with 12 different providers, say, at least, all with different systems and different levels of digital maturity, etc. It's a hard one. And I do agree with, what Kelly said there around the parallel work. I think that it's absolutely imperative that the change readiness is, well prioritized so that you do get adoption. Otherwise, people just kind of don't engage properly just because they're busy people, right? They're busy people. So we, again, will help with as much as that as possible when the time comes, and work very much in partnership like we have with Jeff around taking it forward. But there are lots of components to think about. And as Jeff said, there were some prerequisites for the the home care providers that needed to be achieved in order to achieve this as well. So yeah, it's a complex beast, and I'm wondering, just speaking out loud here, Jeff, it might be worth us together kind of documenting that out a little bit more, I think.
Yeah, no, for sure. And even kind of from NHS England's perspective as well, I guess, the regulatory hurdle as well, and the fact there's no clear definition for a home care prescription. So that was almost kind of a barrier that we had to get over as such. Actually, is a home care prescription defined as a private prescription or an NHS prescription. In the end, it was classified as a private prescription, but only for this proof of concept. And, you know, we had to also get patient consent as well, because their information was obviously going to be shared with the NHS BSA. But that was all only done for this proof of concept. So we do require that kind of regulatory change going forward as to whether or not this is going to become common practice, for example.
Yeah, there's some hoops to jump through yet, I think.
Yeah.
You've led me into my next question, Jeff, wonderfully there. Thank you. Because what I was going to ask you was, you know, what do organisations actually underestimate about implementing, you know, EPS in home care? And it sounds like there's obviously local organisational, you know, processes, etc., that need to be looked at, but there's clearly national, kind of policy aspects as well. But just you know, if you were to think of the top 2-3 things, what would you say? Because I'm assuming there's people on the call that haven't necessarily done it.
Yeah, I guess from a trust perspective was that all the invisible work that, you know, I didn't realize what I was walking into until I was in it. But it's all the governance and the assurance. So that the clinical safety case, and working with our clinical safety officer and on that, you know, the DPIAs and the DIAs, all that paperwork, in order just to implement an IT system, and then and then it's like the coordination as well across the multiple teams within the trust. So obviously identifying the project team within the rheumatology, the IT team, etc. So just identifying all the main stakeholders that I needed to work with from at a trust level and getting them all on board, and also that behavioral change as well, which probably didn't really focus on, because the main focus was just to, you know, prescribe a home care prescription electronically, but we still manage our prescriptions, you know, with that 6-week window as we do with our paper prescription. Not to say that that's not wrong, because that, you know, it means that the home care providers have a longer time to contact their patients and to arrange the delivery, etc. So I guess that was all the internal kind of challenges that had to be overcome.
Yeah, and I suppose, Karen, you know, what from your perspective then, you know, what do organisations, you know, before this kind of model can work, what do they need to do? What needs to be in place? What's the missing part of the jigsaw here? Because it's not all national, is it? You know, clearly that there's a local level of responsibility as well. So, you know, what does it look like for you?
Yeah, so I would say that definitely the process mapping is very important. You know, you're probably going to be in a world where lots of people have a different perception of how that end-to-end process works, but when you actually go through that kind of getting it down on paper end to end, how it actually works with all of the different suppliers will be super important, and it'll help focus, I think, where you may or may not start and who you would start with as well, you know, to get that kind of journey going.
Yeah.
And that will take time. Don't underestimate it. It will take time. As you can see from Jeff's kind of timeline, it took a lot of time for us.
Yeah. Just a question there. So, I mean, obviously, yeah, absolutely, time is super important, and obviously, you mentioned clinical colleagues, Jeff, before, but my assumption is that there's other, you know, members of the wider team that need to be involved as well, digital, operational, you know, kind of non-frontline, if that makes sense. You know, have you got a sense of because there might be people on the call listening that are about to embark on this or would like to embark on it and thinking about, well, what are the resource requirements? Who do we need? You know, so who else was involved then in that kind of 5-way, you know, partnership?
Yeah, so we had the admin, as you say, were involved, and our consultants and our pharmacists, and then we had our IT teams, the smart cards, again, very key, clinical safety officer, the chief pharmacist himself. So yeah, there was multiple stakeholders from a trust level who are involved, and had to bring up to speed within, to implement the project.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really good. Last few minutes, actually, we did say it would go very quickly. We blinked and 50 minutes have gone. I guess looking ahead, maybe to start with you, Jeff. If we were to be here in 2-3 years' time, what would good look like from your perspective? On this one, and how far away do you think we really are from that? Do you think that's a realistic vision?
2 to 3 years.
Yeah. What does good look like, and how realistic is it? How far are we really away from that?
Well, in my dream, I would love end-to-end digital pathway. So right from the point of prescribing to dispense and delivery by the home care provider to digital invoicing. Bringing that whole process digital. And so clinicians are working in one environment, so not having to switch between multiple, and just to remove that friction and fragmentation. And from a patient perspective, there's more certainty as to when their treatment will be, delivered. And ideally, if a patient could order their home care prescription like they do in FP10 within the NHS app, I think that's the direction of travel that ideally we should be going. Yeah. But really, I feel that the main hurdle is the financial flows and how that money is going to be reimbursed. And ultimately, it kind of comes back to Karen's point about standardization. There's absolutely no standardization within how home care and high-cost drugs in general compared to like a community pharmacy, drug tariff contract, for example. Within home care, you're looking at different regional contracts, trust contracts, PAS prices, commercial prices, etc. So there's absolutely no standardization there. But maybe that's again kind of taking a step back and looking at that pathway as a whole. Is that where we need to look at how to redesign? I appreciate that's a massive piece of work, and I don't even know where it starts. But ultimately, I think that's if we can't standardize home care into the home care tariff, maybe, really that's going to be one of the main blockers to getting end-to-end kind of digital system within the home care.
Yeah. No, absolutely. There's another question in the chat that we will get to from Jennifer, but Karen, your view 2-3 years time, 2029, we're sitting here thinking and talking back to that webinar on the, in April 26th, and what we thought would be a reality. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, a bit like Jeff, I'd love to see a near on perfect picture where we have a fully interoperable end-to-end solution. But with some standards, so that you're not in a position where you're kind of like interrupting kind of point to point with particular suppliers. It's there and it's a standard and it can be adopted. Ultimately, we're all in this, aren't we, to kind of improve kind of like the operational life for clinicians and enhance services for patients. Yeah. So as a supplier community, it'd be great to see that happen for absolute sure. It takes that time to get something super established and something this complicated as well. But yeah, if you ask me that question in a few years, that's where I want to be.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, it sounds very realistic and reasonable. There are just 2 more questions that I'll get to before we sum up. So Priya, I hope I said that right, from Guys and Tom is, have you been able to have any early conversations with home care providers on their appetite for standardization tools, this type of system, and their willingness to do this? I don't know if you want to answer that one, Karen.
No, so I haven't been involved in anything yet. As we expand the pilot, that may happen. Jeff, I don't know if you've had any conversation with any of your other providers than HealthNet.
No, I haven't. No,
and I think that's probably something in our conversations with NHS England we'll take back.
Yeah, that's good feedback, isn't it? It's good feedback.
Something to discuss with the NCHA as well, actually, just to feedback kind of the outputs from this particular proof of concept. Yeah, and just understand where their appetite is.
And then finally, before we conclude, then, so Jennifer from Frimley is asking about EPIC's involvement with the project. Has there been any, and as far as planning for future system integration as well?
So EPIC's involvement, they haven't been involved in this particular proof of concept, but I understand that there are plans to integrate EPS within EPIC. But I'm not a part of them, but that's out of this particular home care proof of concept.
Nice. Okay, thank you. Well, thank you both so much. There's just a couple more slides to conclude, particularly around how people can get involved in some of these conversations moving forward. So, as if by magic, there it is. So, as I was explaining before, the EPR network has a number of specialist interest groups, of which pharmacy/EPMA is one of them. So if you're interested in joining that one or any of the others that we have, please do scan the code, come and join us. These groups are NHS led and informed and chaired, and they feed into the wider community of suppliers that are members of the network, which include CLEO. There's around 26, 27 members. It's growing all the time. So come and have your say, come and have your voice, come and influence the design and optimization of these systems as we move forward and help to drive that innovation and those workflows to ultimately improve patient care, which is what we're all about and what we want to achieve. So look forward to hearing from some of you then. You can reach out to any of us. I think the team shared our LinkedIn profiles, but our email addresses are there. You'll get these slides afterwards anyway, as I said. But just to obviously say thank you to both Karen and Jeff for their time today. It's been really interesting to learn more about this, hear more about this, and obviously get into some of that detail today. Obviously, thank you to everyone who's joined us today, and of course, all the unsung heroes in the background, Colleen, Rhiannon, Charlotte, and others that have all worked to make today possible. So thank you very much to all of you. And yeah, we will kind of conclude the call there. I don't know, Jeff, Karen, if there's any final thoughts, final point you want to leave people with before we sign off.
Watch this space.
Yeah. Oh, definitely step in the right direction for sure.
That's good. That's good. And thank you for your feedback on the chat, folks. We really appreciate it. And yeah, have a great afternoon. Look forward to seeing you all soon.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Take care.